Shedeur Sanders was seen as one of the biggest wild cards entering the first round of the NFL Draft Thursday. Sanders had a prolific 2024 season. He posted an all-time FBS record with a 71.8 career completion percentage, was not picked during the draft's opening round, and now waits for his fate to be decided heading into today and the start of round 2. In a video posted to social media after the completion of the first round, Sanders admitted he did not expect to go undrafted Thursday, but he appeared to still be positive. All right, there are only 2 quarterbacks drafted last night. Cam Ward, first overall to the Titans, was not a surprise. The Giants trading up to draft Jackson Dart was a surprise, but it's just the second time in the last 10 years where only one quarterback went before pick 25. Here's a warning from Louis Riddick about passing on Sanders.
All the teams that are passing on him right now, as Mel just mentioned, are taking a gamble. They're taking a gamble. The teams who need a quarterback, and if you pass on him and he winds up having a Drew Brees type of career, a Tom Brady type of career, which he's totally capable of. You're going to sit back and teams are going to. There's going to be a lot of revisionist history on him. I get that. There's going to be a lot of case studies done on why did people pass on him? Was it because they thought he was cocky? Was it because of his dad? Was it because he was too brash? All the other nonsense that you hear. Because it isn't because of how he plays the game. I agree with you.
Strong sound right there. Marcus, why did Shedeur not get drafted in the first round?
Teams didn't think he was good enough to get drafted in the first round. And some teams didn't need a quarterback. Some teams thought other positions were more valuable. And I get, here's the thing, and I said this earlier today, man. I get everybody, because we've talked about Shedeur Sanders ad nauseum for the last 3 years when him and Prime and Travis Hunter showed up to Jackson State. We talked about the tandem. He coaching his father, Shedeur. They transfer and they go to Colorado, and Shedeur plays well. They win the TCU game. Everybody going crazy. They make Colorado relevant. All of those things have transpired all the way up until this point where we get to the draft. And when you start evaluating and teams look at this, and let me say this, the media didn't have one pick in the first round last night. Nobody called us to ask us, should they take Shedeur or should they take Cam Ward or should they trade up to get Travis Hunter? Nobody did that. These teams looked at it and they said, we don't feel like the value is there to take Shedeur Sanders in the first round. There was a team that traded up in the New York Giants that didn't feel like he was good enough for them to take him with the 26th pick. So that's that in that scenario. Here's the other thing. When you start thinking about and this is why sports is so great. As much as we could want to see it for him, and teams have I'm sure teams have come back and said, I regretted not taking this guy. You think Chicago ain't say it after they've seen what Patrick Mahomes has done? You don't think the Giants regret after, even though it might have not made a difference in the championship, what they saw Saquon Barkley do in Philly? So I understand it. This is primetime Deion Sanders' son, who played the position really, really good for the Colorado Buffaloes. They won more games, brought more attention, more eyes were focused. But when 32 teams last night were on the clock, and the teams that needed a quarterback were on the clock, they did not think Shedeur Sanders at that point, which I think he'll get drafted tonight or even in the third round, had enough value for them to use that pick to pick him. That's all it boils down to. Now, we can get into the game and why we think these things happen, but that's ultimately what we watched transpire last night.
2 words: evaluation and projection. And that's what the first round is about. And so, Marcus, you heard me say to Stephen A. Molly, one, can we stop having the funeral for Shedeur right now? Can we stop? He didn't get drafted in the first round. He very well might get drafted in the first 5 picks tonight. And candidly, it could be a better situation for him. So it's not the end of his story. Marcus and I were watching the draft last night with MK and a couple other people, and we're sitting there, and the reality set in of it did kind of stink, because what should be a celebratory story and really cool and inspiring story has turned into this negative narrative and this somber thing. And I'm sure there's a downtrodden feeling about it in the Sanders family. I'm sure it is, because it is a great story. The journey of him and his dad together, it is, and hopefully tonight they'll get to celebrate that, okay? I'm going to keep it on the field, just as the player and the tape. Years ago, Joe Burrow's last year at LSU, before the season started, there's no way anybody said Joe Burrow was going to be the #1 pick in the NFL draft 6 months after the season. But the evaluation process and the play that year led to that. Last year, before the college football season in 2023, no one was saying that Jayden Daniels was going to be the 2nd pick of the NFL draft before that year that he had at LSU. But the tape that year and the evaluation process brought him to that. Cam Ward was not the #1 pick in September, but the tape and then the evaluation process led to that. And so when you evaluate, and this is what, and Stephen A., you've heard me say this, NFL teams don't really evaluate the college kids during the season. They evaluate all the NFL guys. And then the season ends and the evaluation process starts. And when you just were evaluating, you saw good. And you saw a player that was good. And teams decided that they didn't believe that the evaluation was worthy of a first-round pick, nor the projection of what he would be was worthy of a first-round pick. That's just where they are. Maybe he'll go 37 to the Raiders tonight.
I appreciate what you're saying, Dan. And to the producers, I need you to leave Dan Orlovsky and Swagoo up on that screen while I'm talking, because I want to see them during this soliloquy I'm about to drop on you. Dan Orlovsky, I get where you're coming from. And you're right. When we look at Shedeur Sanders, is he as mobile as Cam Ward? No. Does he have the arm strength and the athleticism of a Cam Ward? No. Does he have the size? No. He doesn't have those things. They talked about him having the accuracy as a passer en route to throwing for over 4,000 yards and throwing 37 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. They talked about his toughness because he stood in the pocket and took 94 sacks over his 2 seasons in Colorado. They talked about his poise. They talked about that it factor that he has, particularly when you consider who his dad is and how great of a player and athlete his dad was, and they pointed to that. And they pointed to all those intangibles. Dan Orlovsky, Swagoo, y'all know this better than me. When we talk about the quarterback position, we rave about attributes like that. Am I lying? I don't think I am. And then suddenly, here comes Shedeur Sanders. And those things are being said about him. And then his cachet diminishes week by week by week. Dan Orlovsky, respectfully, where I disagree with you, although I know you're not doing it intentionally, is you're asking us to prioritize the football evaluation, which is the right thing to ask us to do. But what's wrong about what you're saying is that it's almost as if you want us to bypass all the stuff that was said about him leading up to the draft. I am a person that remembers when Warren Sapp's value was diminished and he had to sit there for the draft because of reports that it came out prior to that draft and how his draft stock dropped and how so many of us lamented it. He wasn't the only one that had happened to, but the Eagles ended up drafting Mike Mamula. How'd that work out? Look at the career Warren Sapp had and how legit that brother was on the football field. We got to remember stuff like that. Why? Because even though that draws no comparison to Shedeur Sanders in terms of behavior or anything like that, that's not where I'm going. What I'm talking about is what the media was saying, what was being reported, the anonymous stuff that was being thrown out there. What do they say about Shedeur Sanders? All of a sudden, he shows up at the scouting combine. He doesn't work out. Oh, the meetings, it was the arrogance and all of this other stuff. I'm saying forget all of that. I believe that the biggest issue in all of this was primetime Deion Sanders and the thought of having to deal with him. I just read something this morning where they literally said, you know what? One of the things that folks had a concern about is, were they really getting the truth out of the program? Because when you go to a program and you ask about a particular player, you can get all the intel. But in this particular instance, because he was being coached by his dad, folks weren't confident that they were getting the right, accurate information about him. All I'm saying, fellas, is that it's hard for me to sit here today and to listen to and to watch a dude that was once projected to be one of the top 2 picks, potentially in the draft, to drop completely out of the first round and to ignore all those reports that had come out about him leading into the draft.
Mình cắt luôn cái phần len hồng luôn này. Mình luồn cái phần len thừa xuống mặt sau nhé. Đây, móc vào. Đấy, mọi người móc xuống như này là được này. Đây, được một cái phần mũ như này nhá. Giờ sẽ làm phần trang trí để gắn vào. Mình sẽ sử dụng phần len vàng này để làm phần trang trí nhá. Mình móc một cái hình tròn nha mọi người. Mình gỡ len ra để rồi. Bây giờ sẽ móc hình tròn này. Đây, móc vào. Mình đếm mũi nha mọi người. Mình sẽ đếm mũi. 1 này. Tiếp tục là mũi tiếp theo nha.